Hello everyone, I hope all of you are having a great and wonderful day. I would like to introduce myself and my group members. My name is Safa alongside with Maxine, Jasmine, and Russell. With gender inequality, a topic that is now commonly discussed amongst the old and youth alike. According to lumenlearnings.com, gender inequality is the unequal treatment of someone or a group based on their genders alone. Now, I'm sure most of you viewing this video right now have actually experienced gender inequality yourself, or at the very least, witnessed someone else within your life experience gender inequality within one form or another, regardless of their gender. Now, I myself have actually witnessed someone within my life going through gender inequality, and that someone is actually within my own family member. One particular instance actually happened to my own sister. When our father told her, and her specifically, no one else, not even me, nor even my two brothers, that she should help her mother around the house to do house chores and learn how to cook. My sister protested. She asked why. Why do you only tell these things to me and not to my brothers, even though they've contributed nothing to the matter, she said. My father replied, it is because you are a woman, and because of that, you are obligated to do housework, and they do not, because they are men. Now, I do somewhat agree with my father's wordings here. I do agree that every person should do their housework and do their chores as a basic life skill. However, only stating that only women are obligated to do so and men are, well, they can choose to do so or not to do so willingly is just simply gender inequality. Throughout the history of mankind, men for the most part have been perceived to be the most superior between the two sexes, with men dominating major jobs within the work field. Consequently, women are viewed as weak, inferior, and less capable than men within pursuing a quality career. Women are viewed adequately for childbearing and child caring, in addition to taking care of the house and preparing meals for their husbands before they got back from their jobs. But fortunately, with the modern era arising, women have been given more and more free rein of the jobs that they actually want to pursue. This creates equality between the two biological genders for the most part. But alas, the same couldn't be said with today's topic, the army. My groupmates will go in depth discussing how the army should not lower its standards for women, starting from how lowering its standards for women can actually harm women by jeopardizing their preparedness for battle, as well as creating a false perception that women are incapable of occupying the same jobs as men. This, followed by how lowering its standards for women can actually wither out the army, as a first-hand confidential report stated that a woman was actually excused from a major error she created, despite if a man were to do the same, he would have been expelled from the army. Alright, that's my introduction to the speech. I will now lend my hand to Maxine to explain her part of the speech.
Thank you, Shafa, and now I'll continue with the first main point for today's speech. Lowering standards puts women in jeopardy. With equal opportunity comes equal responsibility. Lowering fitness standards to accommodate women actually jeopardizes them. On February 25th, 2021, Kristen Marie Griest, the US Army's first female infantry officer, mentioned on her article in the website of Modern War Institute that the Old Army Physical Fitness Test, APFT, contains terribly lower standards for women compared to men, which not only imperils combat readiness but also emphasizes the false assumption that women are incapable of performing the same job as men. What of it would put women in jeopardy, you ask? Well, to not require women to meet equal standards in combat arms greatly ruins their credibility, making it hard for them to gain trust and confidence from their fellow teammates. Women fight every day and work hard to dispel the notion that their presence weakens these previously all-male units. We could literally imagine how hard life would be for them in the army. Greece also wrote that the new Army Combat Fitness Test (ACFT) was designed to alleviate these issues by finally assessing women on the same fitness scale as men, and by setting minimum physical standards based on branch requirements rather than gender, which makes it a gender-neutral test. According to the Utah National Guard Official Department of Defense website, there are 6 events in the ACFT. First to be the repetition strength deadlift, standing power throw, arm extension push-ups, 250 meter sprint drag carry, leg tucks, and finally the 2-mile run. As written in the article by Steve Bannon on military.com, the failure rate by event for women are repetition strength deadlift to be of 6%, standing power throw to be of 15%, arm extension push-ups 2%, 250 meter sprint drag carry 12%, while leg tucks and 2-mile run to be of 22%. An initially high collective failure rate among women is not indicative of their future potential to succeed. As the famous idiom goes, failure is the mother of success. With failure comes motivation, and this motivation drives female service members to train even harder and work harder to meet ACFT benchmarks they previously couldn't. The pass rate even increased up 12% from the 2020 passing rate, written by Steve Bannon on military.com. Furthermore, from looking at poses on social media, women proudly display their ability. They inspire, advise, and encourage each other to improve on their physical abilities. This proves that with diligent training and effort, women are capable of doing the same job as men. An article written by Jim Michaels on the Business Insider website mentioned that a member of the tank crew must be able to lift a 40-pound shell off the rack and place it in the breech of the main gun, as well as the average Marine infantrymen are expected to carry 100 pounds of equipment on their back while walking long distances. It is utterly important that women meet these standards if they are to enter these fields. Thus, standards don't need to be lowered for women but to be set right according to branch requirements, as the goal here is not to qualify more women but to ensure that women qualify for the job. That's all from me, and Jasmine will be taking over next.
Thank you, Maxine. And now, hello! So we're just going to take a brief intermission from our speech, and we're going to listen to an interview that I'm going to conduct with my dad, who was a officer in the British Army.
Hi. Hello, so I'm here with my father, Mr. Peter Smith, and I'm going to be conducting an interview with him. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions, nothing too hard. So here's the first question. How long did you serve in the army?
I served for 23 years in adult service.
Where did you serve in the army?
Several locations around the United Kingdom and overseas, Singapore, Malaysia, Mauritius, Germany. Yeah, that was it, overseas.
And did you serve in any wars?
There are only 2 wars in my opinion, that's the First and Second World Wars, but other than that there are active service units or active service areas, and I served in Northern Ireland for most of my adult service from 1969 onwards.
And now as a veteran, what are your thoughts and opinions on the standards in the army being lowered for women?
I don't believe in the standard. This is my personal opinion. I don't believe that standards should be lowered because I think if you surveyed the females joining the army, they would all say that they joined to do the same job as their male counterparts, and so the standards should not be lowered to protect them, really.
And what would you think would happen to the army if more women would be drafted, but the standards aren't the same as men in the army?
Well, again, my personal opinion is that the numbers would fall within the army because, like I said, girls join to do the same job as the men. But if they are being treated differently, then maybe it would stop girls from joining the army or whatever. You know, maybe they would try another service or maybe stay in civilian school.
And do you think there is a solution to this problem?
Yeah, I think the military chiefs have to ensure that the standards are not different, and speak to the female soldiers, get their opinions as well, and then work on them. You know, they should do the same job, get the same pay and everything else, and so yeah, that's what they've got to do. The military chiefs, it's up to them, and the Minister of Defence.
And do you have any other comments or thoughts that you would like to add?
Yeah, I mean, only that during my 23 years as an adult soldier, they were the best 23 years of my life, and I would thoroughly recommend it to anyone who wants to get a profession, because there are so many opportunities. It's not all about fighting wars. There are so many professions that you can, trades you can get while you're in the army or any of the other services, and you can get a lot of good qualifications for either when you leave the army or when you continue further on in the army.
Yeah, it's not just about shooting guns.
No, it's not. I mean, that's the difference. I mean, when I joined the army, I had no qualifications whatsoever. But throughout the course of my service, in order to get promoted, you have to do examinations as well as doing time served. And so I got diplomas in catering, city and guilds, and gradually got promoted from private soldier and left the army as a warrant officer, which all gave me a good foundation for when I did leave the army.
Okay, so if you have no more comments, that is all for the interview.
Okay.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Smith.
You're welcome.
And we shall continue our speech. Bye.
Bye.
And now, Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter of the United States of America opened all military positions to women in 2015. Despite this, the military is still wary of completely integrating female soldiers into combat forces. However, there are female military service members who have demonstrated that they are physically, mentally, and morally capable of leading and executing combat-type missions. As a result, some of these women may consider themselves qualified for the position. But the main problem is not whether or not women are capable of executing combat operations. Rather, it is a question of longevity. Are they willing to face the mortality and medical concerns that come with integration? Can women withstand the physical and psychological demands of long-term combat operations? This question was raised by Captain Katie Petronio of the US Marine Corps, who served in Afghanistan and Iraq. Nonetheless, you know how the saying goes? Quality over quantity. Well, this can also be applied when it comes to drafting women in the army. Let me ask you a question. Would you much prefer having 50 friends and no one to call when the world comes crumbling down? Or 3 friends that have your back through thick and thin? This can also be said for women in the army. According to a United States Army Forces Command briefing obtained by military.com, female soldiers who continue to lag male soldiers' scores in all events such as 2-mile run, deadlifts, and leg tucks, to name a few. According to unofficial Army Combat Fitness Test pass or fail records of 3,206 soldiers in 11 battalions, 84% of female trainees and 30% of male trainees failed the 6-event Army test. From this, we can say that team morale and unit solidarity would definitely decline if women were assigned to these lower divisions with lower physical standards, as men who had to achieve a higher standard to get in would detest women who serve with them because they would have to overperform physically to compensate for the female members who didn't. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Kate Germano, who was in charge of training female recruits at Paris Island, told Marine Corps Times that when women face lower expectations, they end up being less competitive than their male counterparts. Aside from that, author James Hassan, an Iraq veteran with Ranger training, spoke with confidential first-hand sources who reported that female trainees were forgiven severe mistakes that would have resulted in men being kicked out of the military. According to contemporaneous data revealed in Hassan's book Stand Down, one of the women obtained a passing grade despite losing track of one of her soldiers in patrol, causing the mission to be called off. This shows that not all women in military are actually properly qualified. As a result, by establishing equivalent testing for both male and female soldiers, it is feasible to assure that both male and female soldiers meet the same standards. And with that, Russell shall conclude our speech today.
All the proof is there for our very own eyes to witness. The efforts of the military trying to increase the acceptance rate of women joining the army by lowering the standards, they managed to turn a blind eye to gender equality. This manages to negatively impact not only the army but women as well. Back then, people used to say gender equality is a myth, as both men and women have their own ups and downs. That makes them unique to one another. Men, in terms of strength, on average, are biologically superior compared to women. What women lack in strength make up for emotional support they give to their beloved ones, in which is equally as important as physical strength. Gender equality is one of the most controversial topics of all time. We are currently living in an era where it's common for women to be working together with men or even competing against them for jobs where it once seemed impossible for them to be working in. But nowadays, we often see women leading a country, being pilots, or even winning the Nobel Prize. This goes to show, now in society, people are taking gender equality more seriously. Well, on the contrary, there are two sides to every story. With the army lowering standards for women, not only does it ruin their credibility, but also makes women seem as though men are superior compared to them, which should not be the case. One of the reasons people have used to justify lowering the standards for women is because of women's physical appearance compared to men, which happen to play a major role in difference in standards between both genders. However, which should not be the case because factors like physical standards should be taken into consideration, especially if it's directly relevant to being in the army. Every woman should have the opportunity to meet these standards. Women generally are less strong than men, that's reality, but the response to this is not to prohibit women from combat roles, but to only accept women who meet the physical standards. The same standards as required of men, even if that's a very small percentage. It's challenging enough that women have to be proud of who they are while being constantly judged for their lack of athleticism compared to men. Not only does it affect women, but it also manages to affect the strength of the army. Standards shouldn't be lowered, especially if it's for something as important as combat standards, or else it would cause dire consequences. An army with lower standards also means a weaker army, which could possibly lead to a threat to the safety of our nation. The main purpose of any country's military forces is to defend that country from potential threats, whether it's external or internal. especially an army that is specifically intended for land-based warfare. This purpose cannot be carried out to full effect if standards are being lowered, which incidentally prevents the army from reaching their full potential. Standards for joining the army for women should be equivalent to men, and instead of lowering it, they should help drive all women who are aspiring to join the army to work hard and exceed their expectations instead of settling for lower standards. In summary, it not only neglects gender equality, but at the same time lowers the expectations for our army, which should not be tolerated. I would like to end this speech with a quote from Emma Watson regarding gender equality. It is time that we all see gender as a spectrum instead of two sets of opposite ideals. The army should let women meet their standards instead of lowering it to meet theirs. Thank you.